Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:37 on this pretty busy Wednesday morning. Thanks for joining us. Chris Plant comes up in 30 minutes for the Chris Plant Show. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Look who's here, Julie. It's your Attorney General.
That's right.
Jason Miyares.
Good morning.
He's my Attorney General insofar as that I am Governor Youngkin's ambassador to Virginia's wine country. And so if any legal issues ever transpire, he will have to intervene. Attorney General Miyares, thanks for joining us.
That's a great title, Ambassador to Virginia's wine country. I love that. And we have great wine in Virginia, so I'm hopefully
right.
you're visiting often.
By the way, assuming that you have some ambitions beyond the Attorney General's office, which you're currently running for re-election, I hope you keep that in mind and know what side your bread is buttered on here on WMAL. Listen, wanted to follow up with you on a serious matter out of Loudoun County. This has to do with an incident at Stonebridge High School where it appears young men were in their locker room. They are forced to now disrobe and interact with a biological female in that boy's locker room. And apparently there has been some video recording there, and I don't know, maybe you can unpack what you know about this so far at the beginning of your investigation, but it sounds like the boys who were recorded are now being charged with some sort of sexual harassment violation under Title IX, where I thought that we had already solved this problem, and I thought that people were supposed to adhere to their biological sex when they go into a locker room or restroom in a public school.
Well, not according to the Loudoun County Public School system. So back in 2021, they adopted a policy, 840, which allowed you to essentially pick which bathroom, which locker room you wanted to use, basically based on your preference, whatever you say you identify with, whatever, not your biological sex. And we actually have seen a variety of different reports. Nick Knock has really impacted a lot of this in his reporting the last several months of this. Even prior to this incident, boys that were complaining about girls in their locker rooms, girls complaining about boys in their locker rooms. And then in this incident, according to the reports, this was a group of 15-year-old boys in a locker room. A biological girl walked in the locker room, started videotaping them while they're in the locker room. They indicate to this individual, "We feel uncomfortable. Please remove yourself." And now, let's be clear, videotaping within the school is a violation of school policy, right? But even though this person walked in here, videotaped as a violation of school policy, these young 15-year-old boys who clearly felt uncomfortable are now the victims of a Title IX investigation. Title IX is it's one of our principal federal laws that protect students from harassment. It's one of our most important anti-sex discrimination laws that we have on the books in America today. And essentially what has happened is the victims in this incident are now being treated like they're the perpetrators. And the student that apparently was taping this, to the best of our knowledge so far, has not faced any discipline whatsoever. And so that's why we have launched this investigation to get to the bottom of this. But this goes to a larger point, Larry. Why are we having this debate in 2025? If I was to take you in a time machine back to 2010, you would have laughed the idea that this would even be an issue, but here we are today.
You know, this Loudoun County School Board is absolutely out of control. A coalition of Muslim, Hindu, and Christian parents asked, this happened just a couple months, or I think it was last month, they asked the school board to restore bathrooms to the normal order of, you go to the bathroom that corresponds with your sex, your biological sex. And the reaction was the school board shut off the cameras and shut down the mics. They don't even want to hear from these parents. And then, of course, Aaron Spence, who's the superintendent, doesn't want to hear from parents, doesn't want to answer questions from the media. There is a real problem of that school board ignoring not just parents, but the governor's the model policies. Yeah. The model policies. Yeah. And Frank, one last thing here. I'm sorry I'm going on, but this isn't just in Loudoun. This is in Alexandria, in Arlington, and all of Northern Virginia. In Fairfax, my goodness, what's going on in Fairfax is terrible. Why limit this to Loudoun County?
Well, right now, this is what's in front of us. We're not against looking at other school districts. What has happened up to this point is, prior to this, what the school districts largely were doing, in our opinion, is You had the Biden administration that was, quote unquote, interpreting Title IX in a way it had never been interpreted before.
Right.
To say suddenly, and we actually took them to court and got a injunction against the Biden administration on this, trying to say that Title IX actually meant that biological boys could be in women's sports teams and women's locker rooms. And so we had the governor's model policy at the state level. We had this kind of novel interpretation being pushed forth by the Biden administration. And now all of these schools are essentially were hanging their hat on what President Biden was doing. But obviously, that ship has sailed, and they are right now currently under investigation already prior to this by the Department of Education Civil Rights Division over possible violations of Title IX. And so I think a lot of these are a lot of moving parts, but this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It is unfathomable today that this is now the position of today's modern Democratic Party. If I was to tell you in 2010 that pretty much every Democratic politician in the country would say biological boys should be in women's locker rooms and vice versa and on women's sports teams, all of you all would say that's no way that's going to happen. That's fear-mongering. I can't believe you use that irresponsible rhetoric. But yet, when there's a protecting women's sports bill in the United States Senate, every single U.S. senator, including Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, by the way, all voted against it. And that should tell you how far left today's Democratic Party has gotten, that now they are defending this type of policy that's created confusion for our students and fear for our students, unfortunately.
As you know, Mr. Attorney General, 3 corrections officers have been stabbed by MS-13 gang members in the Virginia Department of Corrections. These are gang members from El Salvador who have been incarcerated for their crimes in Virginia. Do we know how many foreign illegal immigrant gang members are in our prisons right now? And have you been speaking with ICE or Department of Homeland Security about potentially deporting these criminals so that they can serve out their time in a Salvadoran prison?
This is what I will say. Anytime you're in a prison system, we have our own intelligence going on, so I'm not going to give you a number. But I will say this, yes, we have had cooperation and resources provided to us by the federal government that previously, let's just say, weren't taking our calls. And it's been a real stunning turnaround. But to show you how upside down it was, during the Biden administration, we had several hundred illegal immigrants that had committed prison sentences that were actually on supervised probation. In other words, they're here illegally, they commit a felony, they have a prison sentence, not a jail sentence. They're sent off to prison, and then they're released back into Virginia. And because they weren't being deported, we had state money paying our state supervised probation officers to have their time having to do supervised probation for these individuals. So that policy is reversed. Those are individuals at the top of the list. And so I think you've seen a sea change. And what I have said is I've gotten more calls, more cooperation from this Attorney General's office, from General Bondi's office, in my first 30 days of their administration that I did in 3+ years during the Garland administration. They have really brought back law enforcement to the DOJ mindset, and it's been stunning to see. And, you know, when we asked in February for an interagency task force to go after these transnational gangs, MS-13 and TDA, that are hurting so many communities in Northern Virginia, within weeks of the request, they not only just said yes, they gave us access to one of their FBI field offices to have state and federal agents working together. It has been an amazing level of cooperation in both the intelligence sharing and gathering. It really goes back to their goal is to make sure that Virginians are being kept safe, and we're doing that too, looking at these prisoners.
Yeah, it's something about law enforcement agencies actually looking to enforce the law that makes a big difference. Funny how that works.
Right?
Attorney General Jason Miyares, always good to speak with you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you all.